So I hope the audio quality is good, Pao. What do you think?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yeah. Yep, I can hear you. Actually, I'm going to switch you over to my computer because it was having issues earlier, but I'm going to disconnect and reconnect, okay?
Yeah, okay. Then I will. Yeah, we will be back soon, so stay tuned.
Here we go.
So now it's quite dark in your room.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll get lighter.
Yeah, it will get lighter. Yeah, great.
Yep.
Okay. Ready, Pao?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Hi and welcome everybody to the ISP Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Thorsten Schmidt. Today I'm glad to have Pao Lo with me in the show. We will speak about ISP efficiency, truck rollouts, and customer call volume. We will speak about the difference, about what it means to implement this in your company. But first of all, Pao, for all the listeners who do not know you, who are you?
Okay, absolutely. So thank you, Thorsten. So Pao Lo, currently Vice President of Network Engineering at Midco. But I've been in the industry since 1999. Started out with MCI, and been with Comcast, been with Charter, been with Sky Cable in the Philippines, worked overseas for a little bit. Armstrong Cable, which is a mid-tier operator, and then now Midco. So definitely grew up in the broadband age in terms of the boom of broadband. So definitely been a great career with the internet. So.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, Pao. So that means you started as an engineer, or how can I imagine what?
Yes, yeah. So started out as an engineer and decided eventually to move into management. But yes, so old telephony engineer working on big DMS 250s, Nortel DMS 250 switches, and Ericsson AXE 10s and DEC 600s.
Yeah, great. So your academic background, maybe you can mention something about this.
Absolutely. So my academic background is I have a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, minor in anthropology from NC State University, a MBA from Wake Forest University, and a doctorate in educational leadership, organizational leadership from Pepperdine University.
Okay, what does it mean, educational leadership or?
Organizational leadership, basically the study of leadership as it overall means. And so since I was in leadership, I decided to go into more leadership to see, get in depth in the study. Yeah.
Yeah. And from the companies you've spoken about, what came to my mind is Comcast. So maybe you can tell something about maybe your first project at the first company you've worked in, and then maybe something about your role at Comcast. I think this will be especially interesting to our listeners.
Yeah, so I've always been in the engineering side of things from the industry. And when I took the role at Comcast, it was more on the operations side. So definitely getting the operations experience. So this is managing and helping out the field. So outside plant and looking at tech improvements on the outside plant, especially at Comcast. So I did 2 stints at Comcast. I did also do the network side of things, and so responsible for network monitoring, break fix, typical NOC activities, so network operations type of activities there. So 2 stints, both operational versus more of the engineering side of things, just to be a little bit more well-rounded in terms of the industry.
Yeah, I think we will speak about this, especially Comcast in the beginning or in the end of the podcast. But Paul, let's start with the topic of ISP efficiency, what this is really about today. So what is important to know when we speak about efficiency at an operator? So what came first to your mind when we speak about this topic?
Efficiency is definitely things from, I break it down into different parts, right? So inside the home and the technician, and being able to be efficient inside the homes. So one of the studies we did when I was at Charter was the number of times, technicians go back and forth between their truck and the home because they left the tool or they left the CPE. And so being able to remotely diagnose the symptoms of the problem so that the tech walks in with the right equipment, with the right tools to do the job, right? And so that eliminates the back and forthness of basically going back to their truck. So that's one way of efficiency, right? Another is the troubleshooting, being able to identify or look at the symptoms and triangulate on what is the fix for these things so that the tech is in and out of the customer's homes. Obviously, we don't want to be in their homes as long as they want us to be in their homes also. So from a tech side, that's one aspect, right? Now, the other efficiencies that we look at is on the plant side, the outside plant side. So, how do we route techs because it is a limited resource we call system techs. How do we route those techs efficiently? Because there are a lot of outages, especially traditional HFC networks. There's a lot of ingress and things that you're going to have to troubleshoot, and you can't get to all of them. And the thing there is that valuable resources. Where do you find the biggest bang for your buck in terms of trying to isolate and make the best and biggest customer impact on there? So to me, efficiency comes into routing technicians and also routing the right skill set, the right technicians that can do these things and be able to resolve these things in a quick fashion, right? So we break it down from the home, we break it down into the plant side, and then efficiency in terms of the head end, right? Most cable operators are still, I've lived in the telco world before, and on the telco side is very rigid in terms of head ends or central offices, in terms of layout, design, organization. So you can walk into any central office in most major telcos and it's well organized. Most MSOs or cable operators are getting there. I'm not saying that they aren't there, but I'm saying that it's a work in progress on the cable MSO side. Whereas where I came from on the telco side, it's very, what the rack, what the row, what equipment is within those rack units. And so to me, identification of equipment and layout on that, what does that translate into efficiency? It means like, if there is an outage and you're responding to that, the ability of technicians not to scour the facilities to find where the equipment is, it's all documented, right? So you're cutting out on efficiencies in terms of that. Now, there's a lot of other efficiencies, but those are things that come top of mind to me.
Yeah. What are the major cost factors from this point of view? So maybe you can speak a little about this. You mentioned that truck rollouts, of course, is an important factor, and it's important to assign the right people to the right task. Otherwise, you will waste half a day. Just in some case, there's a wrong alignment. So anything to add here, Pao?
Yeah. So absolutely. So unnecessary truck rolls, and I think that's something that you asked a little bit about the questionnaire, is that it can range from a truck roll can range from anywhere from $85 an hour to $200 an hour, right? And unnecessary truck rolls is not only a cost to you, but also a cost that unnecessary truck roll we could have leveraged to go fix some other customers, right? And so it's a time waste also on there. So you're looking from anywhere from $85 to $200 in a truck roll that's out there. Now you're looking at percentage wise, some folks are very efficient, can get it down to the 5 and 8% on that in terms of unnecessary truck rolls there. It's the opportunity cost is what I was referring to earlier, is that it's an opportunity cost that you go to a home that doesn't need that truck roll versus a home that needs a truck roll. And so those are opportunity costs. Obviously, customer experience is very big. And so to me, customers will understand outages. Customers want to understand how quickly you can get them back up, right? And I think that is something that we should strive to understand is that they're looking for speed to resolution, because outages are going to happen, natural disasters are going to happen, weather is going to be an issue, equipment are going to fail, but it's how quickly you can resolve their problems, right? Now, tools go a long way in terms of identifying some of these things, in terms of unnecessary truck rolls, and you try to integrate that. So to me, your back office has to be tied in very tightly and neatly, all the way to the tech in terms of workforce management, so that techs are routed to the right jobs, but also given the right tools, basically given all the information that they need to do their jobs when they get to the home. But also, the tools should be able to be smart enough to be able to isolate false positives also, right? So you start eliminating that waste or that opportunity cost in terms of unnecessary truck rolls.
Yeah. Pao, can you speak a little bit about the metrics at Comcast? So what was the key metrics you were working on when you were back in the organization? So can you talk about this, and what are they working on right now?
Well, I can't speak specifically to Comcast. It's been a while since I've been there, so I'll talk more generically, right?
Yeah.
But metrics in terms of plant performance, right? Your outside plant performance, making sure that obviously your technicians are routed appropriately on that. You're looking at things as in terms of customer impact. So these things that you triangulate on, some are lower priority in nature just due to the size and nature of the impact. And so you look at metrics in terms of just response times, in terms of resolution times, in terms of mean time to repair, like everybody else on these traditional metrics on that.
Yeah. And do you see a difference between the bigger operators, like how fast they can be at this task compared to the mid-sized companies? What is your experience here? So who is better,
Yeah.
so to speak?
So I think from a tools perspective, some of the bigger operators have better tools in terms of the ability to triangulate and tie into the customer experience. So let's use an example. If we have a node that is experiencing a problem and a technician is dispatched to go work on it, it is tied back into your back office, into your call centers to be able to message any customers that call in from that area, meaning their main phone number that calls in, and they'll be played a message that we understand that there's a problem in your area. We have a technician already dispatched. And so the automated IVR comes into play. And if it does get through to your customer service representatives, alerts are keyed in there so that the customer service personnel are alerted that there is a tech that's working on that issue and it is a known issue. And just through practice, you know the timeframes that you'll need to resolve those issues. So it may be a 4-hour time frame, it may be a 6-hour time frame, but based upon traditional outages that are of the same type and of the same skill set in terms of technician, there is a plus or minus average time to repair that's assigned to those things, right? And so the automation and triangulation of these things with larger MSOs, to me, are a lot better. Now, the smaller MSOs, it's still very manual. but you're still having to have the conversation with customer care. Someone has to make a note in the billing system. And so to me, that piece of automation is not there yet. Obviously, it's mostly due to cost of integration, because you're integrating across multi-platforms. Not only that, but different systems such as phone systems, such as OSS, BSS systems across the board, to then also tied to the technician, right? So to me, the large organizations, the automation's there, but they also have a lot more volume. So that's I guess the con of that is with the smaller operators, the volume is sufficient for those operators, but not necessarily to the volume of what Comcast or Charter or the bigger operators are dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that like integrating all the different software technologies and the different software solutions that are required for workforce topic, for ticketing, for IVR, and so on. The bigger organizations, like how do they make it? Do they have a team of engineers who put this all together, or do they outsource all the engineering capacity, and what it is compared to the smaller operators?
So I know that the previous places that I worked, we had an in-house development team that really did a lot of the development in-house. And so to me, because off the shelf, out of the box software, as you know, it will address some of the issues, but not necessarily issues specific to the customer, right? And there's some level of customization. So it's the old software issue of, do you develop that software in-house where it's tailored to your specific needs, or do you go out and buy a product off the shelf which may or may not fit your needs, or may not address all your needs? And so to me, those are the trade-offs, right? Whether you bring the talent in-house to do it and you customize it to what you need, or you buy it off the box shelf. But then, off the shelf software, you have different levels of support, right? Whereas in-house, that team or team members may be the brain trust. And so there may be some opportunity risks there with personnel being over-indexed in terms of losing a lot of knowledge base or knowledge that's just been built up through the years, right?
Yeah. We've talked about the efficiency numbers, like time to resolve an issue, and also about routing all the different field tags to the different topics and issues that are in the field. So how is it from a practical standpoint? So is it done on a daily basis? Like, can I imagine just in the beginning of the day, every field technician gets in the office, in the headquarters, and there is like a paper which he grabs and then he drives out, or what is state of the art now?
So most operators now have these days workforce management applications that through obviously smartphones, technicians start off their day usually at their first job already, and throughout the day they're routed to different jobs. As soon as they are finished with one, they're routed to a newer job. Obviously, geolocation helps, right? And so they get moved on to usually the closest job that matches with their skill set. I know that we did a lot of that when we were out in California with another big provider when I was with that team, is that we looked at technicians, because what was happening on the workforce side is technicians were getting cross-routed and routing across town. And if you've ever been to Los Angeles, traffic is not conducive to driving all around town. And so just by implementing a workforce management tool like that, we saved over $1 million in just gas expense for that region in California when we implemented that. So technicians are getting jobs on their smartphones. Example, if you're running late on a job, you can, and the smartphone messages you, you're able to say, hey, I'm not going to make my next appointment. And the system automatically routes a different technician to that job And so there is system time checks that happen and occur on those things. So technicians aren't, going back or getting dispatched, right, or calling into dispatch or dispatch to different parts. Now, granted, there are sometimes emergencies and priority customers that may interrupt those days, but normal workflow should flow through the workforce management applications that most MSO providers have.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that you mentioned the traffic problems like in the big cities, but I guess also, especially in the US, the country is very large. I mean, I always say it, like in Germany, we are a smaller country.
Yeah,
especially if you have large distances to cover. So, I mean, I think this is also very important if the field technician is like 2 hours on the way and then he's on the wrong job, or anyone would be closer to the problem solving it. So, I mean, that is also something that that makes a huge difference if you have a good workforce tool and know where the field techs are located. And is it also possible that the field techs are like, if there is a bigger issue in the region, that they get, let's call it real time, reallocated to a bigger issue? So is this also something that you saw in?
Yes. So for example, say if it was a network outage, which technicians have completely no control of a network outage, meaning the customer calls in and says, I cannot connect to the internet, right?
Yep.
And what would happen is that if it's part of a major core network type outage, obviously the IVRs would be blocked or at least set up to trigger on customers impacted by that outage. Now, the technician in the field doesn't know that that's happening in real time immediately. Okay, immediately they may not know that in real time, but as the systems catch up in terms of triggers and whatnot, those technicians will be alerted that there is a bigger issue that is out there that is beyond their control, right? On top of that, those are technicians that are already on the job, okay? Now, technicians, it would also prevent technicians from being dispatched for a new job related to that network core outage. And so that happens. Now, granted, those calls also will get a call back, meaning the customer, once the outage is done, the customer will tend to get a call back and say, hey, look, are you still down, right? After the network issue has been resolved, are you still down? And if they are, obviously we'll roll a technician out there on those types of things. But if they say, you know what, we're good now, we were experiencing an outage earlier, but we're not now. So those things that are attributed to the outage, we don't roll a truck on. So it prevents an unnecessary truck roll. There is processes back in place for a callback to make sure that the customer is back online. If they're not, obviously there will be a truck roll on that. So, but those are some of the things that happen in real time. But as you know, with systems, as quickly as they are able to update each other is as quickly as your response times to prevent these types of unnecessary truck rolls, if you want.
Yeah, I find it's a really great example to talk about like a bigger outage in some of the areas. You mentioned all the different software architectures that need to work together and to make this really efficient. Like, can we go like, let's say now is the second where there is an outage, like there are, let's say 100 or 1,000 modems offline. How long will it take that, like, we do not only have the field technicians, we have the customer call agents. You mentioned that there are EVR systems. So I think we should also speak a little bit about this. And of course, there's the back office involved. So it's a lot of complexity. So what is the department which gets noticed at first? How is it going through the truck rollout, and how is also like the customer call agents involved? And what is the time frame that we are talking about these processes? So can you speak a little bit about what you...
Just as from experience and not specifically to any MSO out there. So I'm going to say it's less than 10 minutes, if not less than 5. Okay. Obviously, your typical polling cycles vary, but that helps, right, in terms of your polling cycles and making sure that those things. So If you're looking at that, anywhere from 10 minutes or less, as soon as an outage is triggered, since it's real time and outage triggered, it then triggers and flags obviously the billing systems, and then the billing systems, they also flag simultaneously the IVRs that are associated with those. So example, those 1,000 customers that you talk about and say they're off of, let's just say 10 nodes. Those nodes would be flagged at the same time that outage comes in on those things, and it would trigger that way. Now, there are other, obviously, those are major down outage. Things that are more chronic, that the systems has to check to make sure that it's not a false positive. It may take a 30-minute poll cycle, meaning there's 15-minute poll cycles in between. So maybe by the second poll cycle, you're able to catch it, right? So 30 minutes may be something that you would be a system setting, right? And so to me, it depends on the system settings will drive that. Most outages that are complete outages are pretty quick. For the ones that require a check to make sure that it's not a false positive, it may take a couple polling cycles. And again, your polling cycle is going to be critical. It may be as short as a minute, which is very hard to do. And as far as 15 minutes, and how many poll cycles do you need to confirm that it is an outage? So those things may require 2 to 3 poll cycles on those. So it may vary on outage type.
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, what I see at smaller operators or mid-size operators is like there's also the complexity, like maybe having not an interconnected billing system, which is connected with, let's say, your Nagios or your real-time monitoring system.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that means, okay, maybe the back office or the NOC knows, okay, there's probably an outage, but after maybe 10 minutes, like you mentioned, but then customers are already calling in and the front office did not really know. There's no EVR system involved. So that creates also a lot of work to do, like for bigger outages. And inefficiency, like maybe the front office has to call the NOC. There are different people, maybe new employees are settling in the company, not really experienced about this topic. So this is, I think, really a great example to understand that if all the entire chain is automated, it makes a huge difference if you sum up all the different employees who are involved in the process of an outage. And then, I mean, this is a big outage. We are talking also about like smaller outages. So maybe Pao, how is the process handling there? I mean, there will probably not be a real-time trigger from the Nagios system if the customer, let's call him, yeah.
Yeah, so, for smaller operators, sometimes those are manual processes, right? To your point, Torsten. Well, I think nowadays is that there's enough capabilities in-house that we've able to shorten those times in terms of automating those things. So the tie into the billing system, that may be one small piece of the puzzle, but it may not be tied to the IVR system. And it may have to be manually triggered in the IVR in terms of that, right? And so to me, you're absolutely right. There is a gap there. The issue with any software or systems developers that are out there trying to solve for this is that you are dealing with a multitude of different billing systems, different IVR systems. And so I think, some of the different OSS, BSS systems that are out there. And so to me, to become an integrator essentially is what you're doing, and not one size fits all, I would say, would be the case. Okay. And so that's a challenge, is that with the MSO community, it's been growing through acquisitions. And you have to understand the cable industry, how it grew up, is that it really was very entrepreneurial and very franchise driven. Obviously, consolidation has started to happen, but every one of those franchises did things differently, had different billing systems, had different, key systems in terms of IVRs and key type systems, and different OSS and BSS systems. And so as you standardize and consolidate, and that helps with automation, right? So as some of the larger MSOs are able to start standardizing on tools, on applications, then the integration work becomes more available to systems integrators to be able to do these things. Now, granted, the problem is sometimes some systems are closed. For the longest time, example would be legacy Modo and their Aloha network, right? So traditional systems may be closed. That makes NMS and EMS gathering the data that you need to do what you need on the back end in terms of customer support may not be available because of vendors that have proprietary software, proprietary systems. Now, granted, we've come a long way. I think there's more folks open to more of a API, open API type of deal, and so I think it's getting there in terms of that. But absolutely, the smaller operators still have to do things manually and stitch things through. And just because of the nature of the industry is that it's been very disjointed or decentralized, and now the consolidation is happening. You're starting to see some of those things start to standardize.
Yeah, if we talk about an M&A, I think it's a really great example. Let's say a bigger operator acquires a mid-sized or smaller operator. How long will it take to integrate like all the processes and all the different software architectures? I mean, like you mentioned it, the chances are high that they are working with completely different systems, beginning from billing to OSS to provisioning, maybe different architectures. So, I mean, there are many peoples involved. How long do you think will it take? So do you have a...
Yeah, let's use an example. One of the major MSOs while I was there, we undertook standardizing the billing system. And at the time we had 3 billing systems. And obviously standardizing those things cost money, but it's an operational cost, not a capital cost to obviously make more money. It's more of an operational efficiency play, right? And let's put it this way, to get to a point where the organization is so sandbagged or slowed down because of the system that drives you to eventually put the money into to fix it, number one. So it has to become a huge pain point in the organization to even move the needle. So the billing system is exactly that, right? And the quickest I've seen it, even from a smaller operator, is a year. Okay, just use an example of the billing system. The quickest I've seen it is a year. Okay. I've seen it as long as a year and a half to 2. Okay. And so, because obviously you have operational metrics that are based on the billing system, like truck rolls and things like that, that you are now moving to a common platform. And so those reporting mechanisms are slightly different, or triggers are slightly different. And so you have a bit of a normalization period that needs to happen. Example, when we did the billing system at a larger MSO, truck rolls were being dually or triple counted in the numbers. In actuality, we didn't roll that many trucks, but the reporting mechanism on the back office piece and the ties there weren't clean enough to be able to do that. So after a couple months of just identifying where these errors were coming in from to normalize the data. So to me, it could be as short as a year, it could be a year or longer. And that's just the billing system. Okay, that's not just integrating with anything else. That's just standardizing on, say, a billing system.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about the OSS part here. I mean, the complexity is also increasing in this area from my experience in the industry. Like maybe 15 years ago, there was mainly DOCSIS. I mean, the first bigger operators were moving to FTTH infrastructure, of course. And but today we see like all different technologies. And when it comes, for example, to an M&A, we have also to consider that maybe the company is using different vendors, different technologies. I mean, often you need a different OSS platform or provisioning system for, let's say, the DOCSIS infrastructure. Then you have a different provisioning part or monitoring even for different technologies. So billing, of course, is also is a really big topic. That's a really big topic. Let us speak about the OSS part. Different technologies, from your point of view, makes it more complex, or what do you think? Back from the good old days.
I think, we're at a crossroads, right? So
Yeah.
many folks are looking at the DOCSIS technology in terms of DOCSIS 3.1 and even DOCSIS 4.0. And I think some of the standards are coming around that. But obviously, you have fiber-based technology with either you're in the EPON camp or the GPON camp. But you also have to note that we're in an age where you have the next gen PONs that are coming out, right? With NG2 PON and XGS PON that are coming out. And so to me, the biggest thing from a service provider side of things is open access to their architecture and from a software side, so that you're able to do the software integration in terms of provisioning correctly. And also that you don't have to change provisioning systems every time there's a technology change, right, on there. So to me, it's the conversations of driving the vendor partners that are out there to be able to work within the current provisioning systems that are out there and be open enough from a software standpoint to be able to do that. Now, that delves into the whole world of software-defined type networks, right? SDNs that are out there. Is that the more open we're able to be, is the quicker we can deliver the service and speed to market, right? So that you don't have to worry about a provisioning system because it may or may not work with the hardware that you choose. And so sometimes choosing hardware manufacturers may be a limitation because of your provisioning system on the back end, right? And so to me, that's a problem for our vendor community and our partners out there to help solve for the operators, is that we're looking for speed of market, but we're looking at their product. But I think the bigger piece is, how does it integrate to our back office, right? And so to me, those are the things that if I was on the vendor side, which I used to be with Alcatel, pre-Alcatel-Lucent, mergers that are now today. But those are some of the things that you have to solve for, especially if you're on the manufacturing and designing side of the vendor side of the business.
Yeah, I mean, many questions pop up in my mind, so I've write a little bit down. So the first thing, Pao, like you mentioned the complexity while integrating. If you have a paper now, what would be your dream architecture if you start up with a new ISP with a big operator? Like, how would it look like? I mean, we do not speak about vendors or software providers and software provisioning solution, but maybe speak about CRM, OSS, provisioning. So is there something in your mind that you say this is a way how it would be perfect?
Yeah, in a perfect world, we drop ship a customer CPE, and they would just have to plug in if they're Ethernet connected or Wi-Fi in, and then they would hit a splash page, right? And they would self-provision themselves. They can pick out what speed they want. They can pick out what package they want in terms of everything, and then put their credit card or whatever information in, and boom, it goes into the system. The system then reprovisions their CPE to their package, and you're gone. You're good to go in a perfect world. So to me, we're letting the end user define their network, right? I want this speed at this price, and they, basically it's very easy, in my opinion, is to have a modem or a CPE boot up, be able to hit a splash page that, then they can self-provision, and that would flow into your billing system. and also any of the prepayment information that is there in terms of customer payment information, and they be set up with the speeds that they want. And once that's submitted, their CPE takes on the new settings of which they choose which packs they're on, and without even rolling a truck, without even anybody calling into customer service, being able to just do that, and they're off and away. They're going right. I think more and more consumers are more tech savvy, more internet savvy. I would say more internet savvy these days, in being able to do those things. And so, to me, in a pristine or ideal world, a clean slate to start over, that would be your ingest into your CRM systems in the back, right? Or your source of truth, so your billing system, that all that would flow back to that. Obviously, monitoring will be set up, and those things all tied into the back end as soon as that customer's provisioned to what speed on there. So,
yeah. Maybe a short question here. This will, or a statement. This will, of course, also reduce extremely the cost for the ISP if more topics are moved to the customer. Like you mentioned, if auto provisioning, the customer adds the device here, and no call agent is required. Everything is working in a perfect world from itself. So that is, from a cost point of view, also a really amazing topic. Maybe just one thought which is in my mind, like I've always came to the idea when we talk also about software architecture, like separating the CRM system, like which is really the top system, and then below we have like all the OSS architecture. Would this also be your perfect software architecture, or is there anything that you would suggest is better, or is it too complex to mention here in a perfect world, so to speak?
In the perfect world, I think living in two separate systems is great in terms of resource management on the systems, right? And I get that. Ideally, one system, but you need a lot of horsepower behind that. And I think as we start moving towards on the software side, more clustering and being able to throw VMs at these things, right? In terms of more CPU and processing power towards these things, you look at that as why not that possibility, right? Why not that possibility of an all-in-one? Because it's all software. And if you look at that, is that if you're needing storage, you're needing CPU power, you're able to do these things virtually. And then on top of that, you look at reliability, right, on it. So you're looking at cluster and reliability. So to me, in an ideal world, absolutely, one system. But, with today, I think folks are inching there. But here's the problem, right? You have folks that are really good at OSS, BSS, and you have folks that are really good in the CRM system. And everybody wants their market share of the market. And so nobody's willing to tackle that piece on there. It's kind of like, I would say, example would be Cisco, right? Cisco preaches a certain architecture that everybody should build their network to. Well, it's also self-serving, right? Meaning, there's an access, distribution, and core type layers, or now they're introducing segment routing and things like that. But if you really look at it, routing and the server architecture, why not have an NFV SDN in terms of a server-based architecture? Because we can simulate routing on servers today. And so who's to say we can't just simulate routing and switching on in a server type platform where you just have multiple inputs, gig E to 100 gig type inputs, and same thing, gig E to 100 gig outputs, and everything be defined there in that hardware, right, and on there. So to me, CRM and OSS BSS, yes, I would like to see that integrated. I think it's varying interest because of the different software vendors have their own self-interest in those things. And so that's what makes it difficult. And with the billing system, it's the heart of most service providers' networks. And so to change that out, it is going to take, it's a huge undertaking. And usually that's hard to get at in terms of trying to say, we're able to do this, but folks know it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah. So virtualization is an important keyword that you drop here. I think it's really important to go in this direction. And of course, the bigger operators already go in this direction to have like different VMs just starting when it's required. Also from a security point of view, it makes absolutely sense to abstract all the different topics. One thing that came in my mind is like if we talk about the different technologies and the vendors and the complexity which is in the OSS layer, how you all have to abstract this when it came to workforce. So this is another complexity which is in the system. So that means if I have let's say I'm a big operator with hundreds, thousands or millions of DOCSIS devices, and then I have a small FTTH a network or FTTX, whatever. And when it came to workforce, then there's once again the complexity if there's an outage in this technology and here. So how is this addressed? Is it manual work or is it no problem, or is it a problem, Pao?
I don't believe it is a problem, right? I mean, as long as the technician is skilled to be able to handle that issue, right? And so there's a thing called skills-based routing in terms of routing the right tech for the right job on there. So to me, it's a matter of training, right? It's a matter of training, make sure the technician is comfortable doing both. Obviously, there's incentives for technicians to be well versed in both, or multiple technologies to be able to do that. So, to me, I don't foresee that being a problem. The problem would be the learning curve, right? Once folks are past the learning curve, the routing takes care of itself. So it's not terribly difficult in that. Now, granted, you will have mixed areas. If you're overbuilding yourselves, you'll have a mix of both technologies, right? So being able to identify what customer has what technology to route the right tech to. So all that is more about defining the back office to align to the technicians that are being dispatched to these locations, right? So that's where that's at.
Yeah. Paul, let's talk about a smaller outage. We've talked about a bigger outage, like 100 or 1,000 customers are offline. So if there's a smaller outage, let's say 1 or 2 or 3 customers are offline, how automated is this process, and what is important to mention here? Or is it just manual work, like the customer is calling and then he will reach a call agent and the call agent will schedule a truck? How far is the automation at this point?
Okay, so let's use an example. So say there's 3 neighbors. Let's use an example.
Yep.
And one neighbor started experiencing, let's just say, degradation in signal, right? Or a modem is out of specs in terms of our parameters for performance. Some systems are able to look within 300 or 100 feet of that other modem, meaning do I have neighbors that are experiencing neighboring modems that are experiencing the same problems, right? So at a high level, where your network operations centers are occurring, is example, if that one neighbor experiences a signal degradation and now the system's smart enough to say, okay, let me look to the neighbor on the right side and the neighbor on the left side to see if they are having similar problems, right? And if they are, then what happens is that, let's look at concentric circles, right? So that circle gets larger and larger and larger until it stops and says, okay, no more modems are experiencing the same problem. So it may go beyond those, it'll go from one circle, one customer, to now, okay, the neighbor has a problem. So the circle gets bigger and it covers the second neighbor. And then it goes to the third neighbor and says, okay, well, 3 neighbors, and it starts building that circle out to be able to say, okay, where does it stop? Now, if you have more than 3 customers, odds are it's not going to be inside the home. It's going to be somewhere on the plant, right? On the outside plant that's driving that. So it will route a different technician, what we call system techs, to resolve more of the plant issue. Now, if it doesn't go beyond that one modem, then that would be just an isolated incident, and it'd be just one customer on it. Obviously, that will get flagged, but it'll be part of a queue of folks that are working in that area to be able to then, if they call in, obviously that will trigger precedence in terms of that. Your proactive areas, which sometimes we want to get to, or if not where we want to get to, is you can sometimes proactively go work with those customers to have those issues resolved or repaired before they call in, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's more of a luxury these days. It's very much due to lack of manpower and resources that demand maintenance is usually more on the forefront than preventative maintenance. So your DM side of things is definitely driving a lot of your technicians on the outage side of things versus the preventative maintenance side of things.
Yeah. I mean, great that you mentioned the P&M topic, like proactive network maintenance, and I also really liked it, and it's a great topic and really interesting also from an engineering point of view, what you can detect and what is capable of doing, especially when we upgrade to DOCSIS 3.1. It even gets more crazy what you can analyze. So there's a lot of things that you can do, but of course, like you mentioned, you need the time and the engineers or the techs resolving it need to have, let's call it, free time, proactive maintenance time, and no outage time. And
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, especially during the COVID crisis, we also experienced from many operators, like everybody's working from home, so the networks need to be more stable, and if there is an issue, it will far more faster, especially during the day, create manpower at the operator to resolve it. Yeah. So, Pao, anything that we need to add here? What we've talked about? I think we are nearly 1 hour in. So
yeah. So I think we did well on the topics, and I'm welcome if you wanted to talk more about something more specific in the future too, Torsten. So I appreciate the time.
Yeah, great, Pao. Thanks for watching to all our listeners. Our amazing guest was Pao Lo, and my name is Torsten, and see you within the next weeks. Thanks, Pao.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.